Okay, everyone, it is 7:01 and we're going to go ahead and get our presentation started for this evening. My name is Stephanie Franks and I'm the Director of Admission for Keiser University's Graduate School. I am joined here this evening by a number of esteemed colleagues, including administration, faculty, and staff. And we want to take a moment to welcome you to Keiser Graduate School's Grad Night. I will be serving as your host this evening. I'd like to formally welcome you to our Grad Night and thank you for joining us in advance. We have a great mix of presenters and information planned to share with you this evening. And we will be recording this information so that you can have all of this in a takeaway that you'll receive here in the next couple days via email communication, regardless if you attended this evening or if you're viewing this after the fact. So I want to get started by reviewing the agenda for this evening. I will be doing some brief introductions momentarily to introduce you to the esteemed colleagues of mine that are joining us. But our featured presenter for the evening is the value of a graduate school education, what politicians, family, and friends are not telling you. That will be presented to us by Dr. Robert Keiser. I will then talk with you a little bit about how to apply to Keiser Graduate School in the event that there is a mutual interest in our programs. And then we will conclude the evening with some program breakout sessions, again, presented to you by our deans, faculty, and staff here at Keiser University. So again, thank you for joining on this evening. And I want to go ahead and get started. Just a few basic housekeeping notes before we begin. Please feel free to ask questions during the session. We want this to be an interactive engagement. Dean DeSormo will be monitoring the chat box and will prompt us if there are any questions that need addressed during the session. Feel free to answer or ask your questions into the chat box or raise your hand using the Blackboard prompt to raise your hand. And then for those of you that did not select a program of interest prior to joining the session tonight, please do so by selecting at the end of the presentation whichever breakout session you feel is most appropriate based on your program or programs of interest. Okay? So as far as introductions are concerned, I want to first take a moment to introduce you to the academic leadership lineup. And this consists of our deans and campus leadership that have joined us this evening. So we first have Dr. Donald DeSormo, who is our Dean of Academic, Business, and Criminal Justice Programs, as well as Accounting. We also have with us Dean Ashley Robertson Arguego, and she oversees both our psychology and education departments. We have with us Dean Brian Kientz, who oversees our healthcare, nursing, and nutrition programs. And then we have joining us this evening from our West Palm Beach campus, Vice President Jennifer Ills, who is overseeing a review of our chiropractic program with her faculty. And then we have Dean Lauren Corder joining us from the Naples campus to make sure that you have information and insights on our nurse anesthesia programs. Next, I want to introduce our administrative lineup. We have our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Robert Keiser, who will be speaking momentarily. Director of Graduate Programs, Dr. Jin An, who oversees in a regional capacity. And then myself, your host this evening as the Director of Graduate Admission. So please welcome and thank you all for joining us this evening. We appreciate the support of all faculty, administration, and staff for our graduate night programming. So with that said, I would like to introduce you to our featured presenter of the night. Dr. Robert Keiser is our Vice Chancellor of the Graduate School here at Keiser, and he'll be talking to us tonight about the value of an education, a graduate school education to be specific, and what politicians, family, and friends are not telling you. As my boss, I'm a bit biased. I think you're going to find this presentation quite enlightening, and I would like to welcome you, Dr. Keiser.
Well, thank you, Ms. Franks. And if I don't see the presentation on the screen, I don't know if you can share it.
Are you seeing the presentation?
I do not on my screen.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, perfect. And then if we could back up a slide or two. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I really appreciate your interest in Keiser University. This is true, but it's also a bit of a joke. Miss Franks is partial to me, partly because I do pay her to say that, partly because I have the pleasure of working with her, and I think that's a one-way street in terms of I really enjoy working with her, but we won't pull her right now about what she thinks working with me. Hopefully, this will not be too painful of a process for you all. I do not love monologues, and I certainly don't love presentations that are one-sided. Therefore, if you all have questions or comments, please feel free to chime in, and please feel free to insert those questions or comments in the chat box. I want this to be as interactive as possible, as Ms. Franks mentioned. As she mentioned briefly, I am Robert Keiser. I'm the Vice Chancellor of the Graduate School and support all graduate students for this institution. I believe my job is to support all of you students, prospective students, and be a resource for you all. The topic of the presentation tonight is the value of a graduate school education. There is much information out there in the news and politics and just general communities in which you live about why you should not attend university at all and why you should not do an advanced degree. Next slide, please, Ms. Franks. Perfect. So the common reasons that you may have heard, and of course this list is not exhaustive, would be one, college degrees have little application to occupation. They mention that you'll learn a variety of intellectual pursuits, but nothing that will actually help you in career advancement or in the job that you are seeking. Number two, your chosen field does not require a degree or a graduate degree. This could be true. This could also not be true depending on the occupation that you choose. But also, I believe there's a general value to getting a graduate degree, which I'll discuss in a future slide. Of course, the big one nowadays is the cost of education or cost of attendance in post-secondary talk, and the return on investment. What are you paying and what do you get back from it? You hear much conversation in politics related to student loan forgiveness, about the cost of attendance being too high, that it's pricing out many students from participating in university and getting degrees, let alone advanced conversation, and it is a polarizing one as well. Number four, most colleges haven't quite figured out the whole online education thing yet, which means you won't learn as effectively. This is something that is a common refrain, especially in the midst of the pandemic, which we are all living through or have lived through, depending on your perspective on the pandemic. We have all had impacts to our own industries. We have had impacts in terms of our personal lives. What is true for post-secondary education is that a very typical brick and mortar or on-ground model had to transition almost overnight to an online asynchronous model. Some universities were able to do it, some others struggled. Number five, obstacles to completion, which are the normal things that we talk about in terms of persistence or retention of students and the ability for you to get your degree. Balancing family, balancing the time it takes to study with the occupation that you may be in, the cost of attendance, and whether you can do it in terms of your work schedule, whether your employer will support you at all for your occupation. And finally, this is probably my least favorite comment as why you should not pursue a graduate education is the belief of people around you that may not be so positive, which is you're not graduate school material. Sure, maybe you could have got that bachelor's, degree, but no one in our family, no one in our immediate friend group, no one in our occupation has received a master's degree or a doctoral degree. Why do you believe you can be the one that can do it? I think that is just self-defeating talk, but there are a variety of reasons why many of you on this call absolutely are graduate material. If you could proceed, Ms. Franks, please. Well, first and foremost, I want to tackle the topic of the methodology or the type of education that is provided. There are two camps, and this relates to the number one discussion of why you should not attend, is that education is not aligned with occupation. Well, in post-secondary education, there are two camps. There's the traditional liberal arts education, and there's a career-oriented education. As I comment on these two items, they are not just necessarily mutual. To read critically, write cogently, and think broadly. These skills will elevate your conversations in the classroom and strengthen social and cultural analysis. They will cultivate the tools necessary to allow you to navigate the world's most complex issues. That is a absolutely brilliant, well articulated academic paragraph, which just means that they're going to give you a well-rounded holistic education that does not focus on occupation, but focuses on making you a better thinker. That is the traditional way of university. Keiser University takes a different approach, and we're not alone in this. Career education is the focus of Keiser University with a touch of the liberal arts perspective, and I'll get into that in just a second. So what is career education? Career education refers to the totality of experiences, school-based and otherwise, that helps that helps individuals acquire and use the knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to make work a meaningful, productive, and satisfying part of life. So what our education focuses on, and if you can go to the next slide, Ms. Franks, please. If what our education at Keiser University focuses on, which is included in our mission statement, is to provide students with the opportunities to develop knowledge, understanding, and skills necessary for successful employment. By doing so, we are committed to a student-first philosophy where we institution is to actually give you the technical skills and the real world knowledge to compete in a global environment, but also to be a successful professional in whatever occupation you do choose. So our focus is different. Our reason for existence is different, and therefore our education is applied. Next slide, please. Perfect. This slide refers to the second comment, which is, well, does your field even require a graduate degree? Is there even a purpose to go into a graduate school and seek an advanced degree? Well, the truth be told, it really depends. I'm not going to get up here and tell you a lie, which is, well, every single occupation requires a graduate degree. I think we're all smart enough to know that is absolutely not true. And I can be the first to tell you, an advanced degree absolutely does not guarantee you success in any form or fashion. I do not want that to be the takeaway from this presentation. But what I can tell you is that although not every occupation requires a graduate degree, many do, and even those that don't, many who are in those fields find great value in having an advanced degree. So let's look at the list. I listed a couple that are related to many of the programs that are represented tonight. College professors. I have incredible pleasure of working every single day with graduate faculty. I can assure you and promise you, not a single one of these faculty members could be your professors if they did not have an advanced degree. Our regional accreditor demands that. An educational administrator, I have a doctorate. I would not be able to do my role and would not be able to be hired if I didn't have that advanced degree. Psychologist, CEO, CFO, I'm not going to read the list to you. However, many of your fields, such as chiropractic, being a mental health counselor, being a nurse anesthetist, nurse practitioner. Many of these fields are absolutely required that you have a graduate degree, criminologist. However, there are many fields that don't, and that's okay too. But what I wanted to let you know is that although that may be true, what doesn't vary statistically is the value that a graduate degree provides. The reality is that a graduate degree is a good investment, and then now we'll piggyback into the cost conversation. So according to Forbes, 54% of the Fortune 100 CEOs or chief executive officers have graduate degrees. Similarly, 57% of the Fortune 500 CEOs hold advanced degrees. Now, you may not think that's a huge number. I mean, really, that's only just a little bit more than half of these CEOs who are making the most money in the world. But what that is actually, if you look in comparison to the rest of the United States, only 12% of the 25 or older population in the United States actually has advanced degrees. Please continue. Okay. Well, we looked at the business people, as I was going to mention and mention on the previous slide, 72% of them have MBAs. Well, that might make sense, and you may say, well, of course, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 CEOs should have advanced degrees. What I can tell you is that most of those companies, they do not have a requirement for advanced degrees. If you do not believe me, Microsoft, where it's very famous that Bill Gates is not even a graduate from college, is the ranking member in that organization. So the reality is that the majority of those CEOs found it necessary or found it valuable to get an advanced degree. What about politicians? There is a lot of conversation related to student debt, student repayment. Embedded in that conversation is this thought process in some areas, not all, that the cost of education is too high and that the value that one receives from a college degree or a graduate degree is just not worth it. It's just not a worthwhile investment. So let's see if the politicians actually walk that walk. So according to the Congressional Research Service, which is an internal research service for Congress, more than 1/3 of the House of Representatives and more than half the Senate have law degrees. Roughly a fifth of senators and representatives have their masters. 4 senators and 21 House members have medical doctorates, and an identical number in each body, 4 or 21, have some kind of a doctoral degree. Whether it's a PhD, a doctor of philosophy, EDD, doesn't matter, but perhaps most fundamentally, 95% of today's House members and 100% of the I think that of the Senates, I would say that probably senators, have a bachelor's degree or higher. Yet a bit more than 1/3 of Americans do. So the reality is, and this is the quote, this is not my quote, this is a quote from a political pundit that says, this means that the credentialed few govern the uncredentialed many, writes the political philosopher Michael Sandel in a book that he published coming this fall. So what I think this says to me, when you look at the Fortune 100, you look at the Fortune 500, when you look at our bicameral legislature, the House and the Senate, what is clear is that these individuals who are the power brokers of our society are getting advanced degrees, by and large, much more so than the average Americans. Please continue, Ms. Franks. Therefore, it can't be that bad of an investment. I mean, if the power brokers of our society are doing it and they're the ones who are advancing and getting the higher wages, it's probably a good idea. But let's put this into economic considerations. So is the cost of education and ROI worth it? Well, that's a great question, and it's a reasonable question to ask. I went to George Washington University. I got my MBA and got my undergraduate degree. The cost of education was much higher than it is at Keiser University, which was essentially it's now about $60,000 a year for 2 semesters. Now it is previously it was about $50,000 a year, so very expensive. And you have to live in DC, even though it was a great experience, very expensive. Anyways, to be sure, earning a master's degree has historically been tied to higher earnings. These are not my words. This is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That those with a high school degree earn about $746 per week on average, when college graduates earn about $1,200 per week, while master's degrees graduates earn about $1,500 per week. They didn't measure doctoral candidates or doctoral graduates. Pew Research, likewise, found that since the pandemic began, highly educated workers are that take away and eat into our wages. Similarly, according to NACE, people with master's degrees or doctorate degrees can bank on a much higher starting salary than those with the same major, but only a bachelor's degree. That's according to a recent survey of the National Association of College and Employers. I think that's obvious. And to illustrate the point of where Keiser University fits into this conversation, now this is a third party. You can verify this if you want, but Keiser University was recently named among the best colleges and universities in the United States for affordable online doctoral degree programs. We earned the number 17 spot on the list of the top 25 most affordable online doctorate programs at public and private schools in the country. Next slide, please. So that is just to illustrate that Keiser University does realize that this is a real concern. We want to make sure that we are efficient in the way we operate, but that we're also cost effective, but ultimately that this is a good value proposition for students. This further illustrates the point that I'm making. This is educational attainment and earnings of employees, and this data is from the U.S. Department of Commerce and the Census Bureau. So essentially, as you can see, those with master's degrees earn higher wages than those without. Please continue. Furthermore, this is another data source from the BLS about median or weekly earnings for doctoral, professional, and master's degrees. As you can see, this actually includes doctoral degrees. That's why I wanted to add this, that the average weekly earnings are higher for these individuals. Again, full disclaimer, next slide, please. This does not guarantee you, if you're graduates of Keiser University in any way, higher wages. This doesn't guarantee you a job or anything like that. Frankly, it doesn't guarantee anything. But what the data shows, more often than not, those with advanced degrees tend to earn more. Oh, I'm sorry, did someone have a question? If they did, please just write in the chat that they had a question. And I apologize, I should be stopping for that. So this figure shows that those who are considered in the higher income bracket or socioeconomic status, which is what SES refers to, tend to go get graduate degrees. So the reason why I show this again is to illustrate a similar point to the Fortune 100, 500, and the politicians, that those who are considered in the higher SES brackets, their children tend to seek advanced degrees because the parents believe that it's important for their child's advancement. Next slide, please. So I think we covered that graduate education, at least in my perspective, for whatever it's worth, is a good value proposition. However, what about doing online education? Now, many of you, not all of you, and I understand that that's not lost on me, is going to be doing a fully online program. Many of you are going to be doing a hybrid program. If you're doing an on-ground program, please ignore me. It's okay. you can just turn off your video camera and shun me. I will not have hurt feelings. But for the majority of you, this will be applicable. So does Keiser University have any idea what they're doing in online education? Well, the fact of the matter is we do, and it's because we've made many mistakes along the way, and we've done it for a long time. And that's what's necessary to learn any trade. So Keiser University began offering online classes in 98, when many people were not even utilizing computers, frankly. Keiser University has been awarded by Anthology, which is also Blackboard, which is our learning management software, the Catalyst Award in 2022 in the Assessment and Institutional Effectiveness category. This award recognizes institutions have grown their assessment practices, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, we have won this award 4 years in a row. This is a reckon in different categories: leading change, training and professional development, leadership. Next slide, please, Ms. Franks. But ultimately, these are third-party verifications from Blackboard, which is one of the largest learning management softwares in the entire country and the world, that Keiser University is on the forefront of innovation and providing quality education in the online modality. The last slide I want to share with you, and I'm not going to read this to you because I probably have already read too much to you all, and I appreciate you humoring me, is the awards and recognitions that Keiser University has achieved, which we can discuss, and you can see we even have sports programs, which we're very proud of. But many of them relate to our quality of education and what we do in Florida, but also in the country. Next slide, please. So I want to discuss obstacles to completion. There are the typical obstacles to completion for students, which we discuss in the title slide. But many of you might be thinking, I am perhaps a little bit too far in my career to pursue a graduate degree. I don't want to sound derogatory, but I have heard this. Many people say, hey, I'm too old to go back to college, or I've been there, done that, but everything has changed now and is different. Well, I can tell you that's absolutely not true. Objectively, it's not true, because the average age of the Keiser University graduate student is 40 years old. We have a graduate actually who just made the news, who was 95 years old. That was our that was our oldest graduate ever. I don't expect anyone on this call is 95 years old, but what I want to let you know and reassure you is that if you have the will, if you have the discipline, you can certainly achieve. Also, one of the unique factors of Keiser University is that we regularly schedule per program 1 or 2 classes at a time versus, say, 4 classes in a semester in which you take English, history, math, and science all at the same time. What does that do? That helps you avoid cramming. That helps you balance work and education in terms of the time, and helps you also immerse yourself in the educational material and reintegrate yourself into getting into a habit of going to school. So that's a huge benefit that we find for our adult learners. Furthermore, we try to be generous in our transfer of credit policy, which of course, the more credits you get to transfer in, the more time you save and the more money. This is probably, for me, the most important aspect of this, the student first approach, where you're not a number. Just to illustrate that point, I did appreciate my time at George Washington University, but one thing that I did not appreciate, it was absolutely a number. My student ID was G336428858. For those of you who may have friends who've gone to Keiser University, none of them will remember their student ID. We never refer to you by student ID number, and the reason why I remember that student ID number is because that was exactly who I was to George Washington University. My faculty did not know my name. My administrators never met with me. The way I paid was through a student ID card. I could have existed or I could have not. I was literally a number to them, and that's how I remember that number. I promise you that we will know you much better than that, and we will make sure to try to engage you in learning and help you be successful. That's our goal. We have a small average class size in graduate programs, about 12 to 1 for graduate studies. Some are larger, some are smaller. That's just our average. Finally, and I won't belabor this point, we have many resources available to students. We have dedicated operational areas which include admissions and financial aid, meaning that you will not be going to a kiosk to get your financial aid. You will actually be meeting and talking with a financial aid director or officer whose job is to help you get packaged for education and make sure that your payments are affordable. And if they're not, then that's up to you entirely, and that means that you probably cannot go, and that's okay too. You have admissions counselors who are there to support you and help you overcome, the challenges of technology, filling out your enrollment paperwork, explaining to you what the expectations of students are. Of course, you have absolutely amazing faculty who are dedicated to you, that, as I mentioned, will know you by name and what you do. Furthermore, we have a student services director at each campus and counselors or coordinators at each campus that help you find employment post-graduation or help you become a more attractive individual for career advancement. And our job is to support you in that regard and to connect you to opportunities. We do take the mental health of all of our students very seriously. In fact, we subsidize access to a mental health teletherapy app called Meta. Furthermore, we provide to all of our students an opportunity to have a psychologically safe conversation with an ombudsman. You can call them anytime. You can share any concerns you may have. Sometimes it's just nice to talk to someone. Furthermore, we do provide load counseling, load consolidation services, and coaching for students who are graduating through our partners in ION tuition. Of course, many of you may have loans. The trick to it is making sure you understand the loans that you have in your repayment structure and putting to yourself together in a plan that is best for you. Finally, we have fabulous writing studios, math labs, and online libraries that will help you. And I would absolutely encourage all of you to engage them. They're all really great. Help you overcome some of your quantitative struggles. Maybe writing's not your thing, punctuation, grammar. I know grammar is not mine. Absolutely reach out to the writing studio. They can help you with APA formatting, grammar, writing, prose, and things of that nature. And then, of course, as graduate students, you have access to electronic resources via our online library. Next slide, please. Finally, my message to all of you is that you are graduate material if you commit to a plan in which you can follow through, meaning make time to study, make time to attend classes. Furthermore, you are graduate material if you understand that it is a tough journey and that you persevere and that you tell yourself, I will do whatever I need to do to be successful, and you delay gratification. Look, we all want to watch TV, whether Yellowstone is your thing, Game of Thrones is your thing. I am sorry, somehow I lost the volume. I will save you the monologue. What I will just tell you is that you absolutely can do it. And I want to make sure that you all believe in yourself as long as you commit to your studies and have the discipline to be successful and delay gratification. My final point, and I somehow lost camera and video on you for a second, is that my favorite ranking or external validation is the one shared on the screen, which is that we're ranked number 5 in the country in social mobility, which means we are very well equipped of taking students who are blue collar and helping them become gray collar students and helping them become white collar students. This speaks exactly to the return on investment conversation that we're having, and that anyone from any background within our format can be successful as long as they dedicate themselves to their studies and they do what they need to do to be successful. I believe that is it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I really appreciate you all being hostages in this monologue, and thank you again for having me. Ms. Franks?
Thank you, Dr. Keiser. We greatly appreciate you joining us this evening and covering some pretty great insights on the topic at hand. Before we move on to the next segment of the presentation, do we have any questions for Dr. Keiser? Okay. I will take that as no, we don't have any current questions. For you. And as Dr. Keiser had mentioned earlier in his presentation, you have the opportunity to speak to a number of constituents across the Keiser institution, from admissions to financial aid to registrar, bursar to academics, faculty, and staff, who all are here to provide you dedicated resources to make a decision about your graduate education. You have the opportunity to schedule an interview with one of our graduate admissions counselors who will talk with you in great detail about what your goals are in relation to achieving career outcomes and what type of program might ultimately help you achieve that end result. We'll help navigate you through the application process, and we'll work with you collectively to determine what type of documentation is necessary to render an admissions decision for your particular program. As I'm sure you're well aware, in doing graduate program research, there are a number of different admissions requirements dependent on the program that you choose, be it an MBA or a clinical mental health counseling program. Each of those will have different admission requirements, and your counselor is happy to assist you through that particular process. You will also be scheduled to meet with a dedicated financial aid officer who can work with you to determine your financial aid eligibility, everything from loans to scholarships and any type of funding that could potentially help you achieve the goal of your graduate education. That is a process that we will work with you through from start to finish to ensure that you know what you potentially qualify for, be it online or at one of our face-to-face campuses, like our West Palm Beach flagship or Naples campuses that are joining us this evening. We will also work with you to schedule your courses. We try to take the guesswork out of that process for you so that from the time that you get started, you have the right classes that you need in the order that you need them to ensure that you can complete your program timely, and most expediently, so that you can be out in the workforce sooner. Obviously, it is ultimately up to you to be successful in those courses and to ensure that you're taking those courses as they're scheduled and offered for you. We also assist you with the book ordering process, and we make sure that we are working with you from the perspective that we provide you with a lot of new student onboarding opportunities through our Keiser live session. We also hold orientation live sessions at the campus level as well as the online level that really help you navigate the online classroom or what the expectations are for you the first week of class all the way through residency, dissertation, so forth and so on. So we want to be that resource for you to provide you with the tools that you need to make a decision about your graduate education, be it with Keiser University or another institution that is the right fit for you. In this presentation, I am providing to you for a later date an opportunity to schedule a virtual visit with one of our admissions counselors. We are here 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday, typically Monday through Thursday from 8 to 9, Friday and Saturday from 8 to 6, and then on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. to answer any questions or to conduct one-on-one interviews with you regarding your program of interest. Those links will be available to you in this presentation. And then, of course, we'll also provide you with the application to apply to Keiser Graduate School and to schedule any additional financial aid appointments. With all of that said, I would like to close by wrapping up with our breakout sessions. Those breakout sessions are going to be provided to you by Dean DeSormo here in the chat. He's going to provide a link that you will need to click on depending on the program that you're interested in. The breakout sessions typically last anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the program and the number of questions that are addressed during that session. I did want to introduce you to the individuals who will be spearheading those sessions. In the education session, we have Dr. Van Deventer. In the criminal justice session, Dr. Turner. In our psychology and clinical mental health counseling session, we have Dr. Franklin and Dr. Robertson. In our nursing and nutrition session, we will have Dr. Mundy, Dr. Martin, and Dr. Greenwood. In the nurse anesthesiology session from our Naples campus, we will have Dr. Corder. In our chiropractic session, Dr. Ills will represent our West Palm Beach campus. In our business and accounting session, as well as the department, we have Dr. Egertson, Dr. Brown, and Dr. Farrell. And then for our sports management program, we have Dr. Bucher, who is representing our flagship campus. So please refer to the links that are being provided to you by Dean DeSormo in the chat, and you may click on those links at any time. As you are clicking on those links, I'd like to thank you again for participating in our grad night. Should you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Stephanie Franks, Director of Graduate Admission, or anyone on the team, and we'd be more than happy to assist you in learning more about Keiser University Graduate School. In the meantime, you will receive an email from Keiser University Grad School with a recording of this webinar and with all the links that we're referencing this evening. Thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Please go ahead and join your respective breakout sessions. Thanks and have a great night, guys.